Hi there, this week it's time for Tire Prep Basics Part 2, and as I promised last week, we're gonna talk about what you can do with tires when there's a tire additive rule that's open. So when you have free hands to do whatever you want and you can use any tire additive or cleaner that you want, then you have obviously a lot more options. So first of all, we're gonna talk about cleaning. And as we spoke about last week, it's very common to clean the tires with a brake cleaner. As you can see here, it's a common method to use, but not necessarily the best one, because the brake cleaner, as I explained last week, it's pretty aggressive for the tires and makes the tire life a bit shorter. So when you have the option to use a specific tire cleaner, such as this one from Acorn, it's a aggressive cleaner but also softens the tire a bit. There's other products on the market which are pretty good for the same purpose, such as Trinity Red Dot and similar products which they soften the tire but also specifically work well for cleaning. So the benefit from using a specific tire cleaner over the brake cleaner is that you can prolong the tire life, and actually you can make the tire both softer and stickier. So that's the first step in the open tire additive basics. So in general, the most aggressive additives for carpet racing that I found is the HUDY Red, which is a new additive from HUDY. It's a pretty aggressive additive that gives a lot of grip. But we also have the good old Mighty Gripper V3, which is a very popular choice. It's really aggressive as well, gives you a lot of grip. And the new additive which came out last year is the P-Hub Pink, which is pretty popular in Europe. It's also a very good option for carpet when you have the option to use any additive. And what I wanted to say about these additives is that carpet additives, or so to speak carpet additives, they actually work really well for asphalt as well, but mainly for asphalt tracks where the surface has been sprayed. So on high grip asphalt surfaces, such as tracks that are seen in the US and Southeast Asia, like Thailand and such, they're often sprayed with sugar water or some kind of sticky liquid which favors these kind of tire preps, such as carpet additives. And depending on the track temp and the grip, you may or may not want to use tire warmers as well. But yeah, that's good info to have, that your carpet additives are equally useful outdoors depending on the surface. So for lower grip tracks or tracks which haven't been sprayed, it's very common to use an oilier additive, such as these two types here. For example, the good old Trinity Tire Tweak. It's a very good oil-based additive which works well for low grip tracks, but also sometimes for high grip tracks. And in Europe, it's popular as well to use the MR33 V3, which is this red color bottle, which is also the spec additive for the ETS as of the last couple of years. And I can also recommend Spider Grip Red, for example, is a pretty good oily additive for this kind of traction level. So when you use these additives, as I've shown last week, it's pretty useful to have a paper tissue between the tire and the tire warmer to evenly distribute the additive around the tire, but also to soak up the excess additive, which is going to be more with these kind of additives. When you use an oily additive, there's going to be more excess compared to when you use a thin carpet additive. It is also quite common to use a second additive, and this means that the tire prep procedure is a two-step process. So you would first apply an oil-based additive, such as Tire Tweak, which I mentioned earlier. And Tire Tweak has been sitting on this tire now for about 10 minutes, which is a longer period of time. And then, for the last 5 minutes of this tire prep procedure, we're going to apply a thin, more aggressive additive, such as a carpet additive, like the HUDY Red, which I have here, or Mighty Gripper or FX2, for example. They are all quite useful as second step additives. And they go on top of the first additive. So what you do is you just take the warmer out. As you can see, it's almost dry. So you just take the second additive. You start to applied on top of the tie tweak in this case. So on top of the tie tweak goes the carpet additive, put the tie warmer and the tissue back on, and you let it treat for the last 5 minutes of the tie prep procedure, and then you're good to go. And what the two-step additive process does is that it gives longevity to the additive, so you make it last longer, basically, compared to using just a carpet additive by itself. Can be very good for the first few laps. You have very good traction for the first few laps, and then it wears off. It doesn't last for the duration of the run. So on the other hand, when you use an oilier additive, it may give you good grip for a long duration of time, but it might not be really good up front. It might be just okay for the first few laps. So when you use a second additive, it can make the car start better. You can have better lap times from the first few laps while you maintain good traction for the duration of the run. So you get best of both worlds, basically. That's why sometimes a two-step tire additive process works really well. And this has been especially true for Sorex tires in the past, actually. Most of the time when we ran Sorex tires in the UK, we used a two-step tire additive procedure. So last week I explained how we use a paper tissue in between the tire warmer and why we do it, but there's another option for the tissue, and you may use a piece of cling film instead. And this is stuff you can see here. In Europe or in UK we refer to it as cling film. It may have another name in the US or so, but it's a pretty common household item. It's used for preserving food in the fridge, for example. And this particular one I have here is actually for tattoo artists, and it's working really well because it's just the correct size for the tire. So however, I'm gonna explain why we use this. And you simply wrap it around the tire. You wrap it around the tire like this, all around like that, just enough to cover it. And this helps to seal the additive onto the tire. So it leaves the tire oilier, as the additive doesn't evaporate in the same way as it would with a tissue. And it simply stays on the tire longer that way. So when we use this method, it can work really well when an oily additive already works well, but you want to make the tire even oilier and you want to make sure the oil stays in the tire for longer. So what you need to keep in mind is when you use this method is that it seems to need a longer tire additive timing. So with the cling film, you probably need to use the tire warmers for a bit longer. Let's say you use them for 15 minutes. With the tissue, you might need to use them for as long as half an hour with the cling film. And make sure you dry the tire completely dry before you go to the track. But if it's too oily, it's not gonna have good grip for the first few corners. Tire warmer goes on, just like that. So one last trick or tip that I wanted to share with you is that I often try to not use the additive bottle until it's completely finished. So when it comes to a point where it's just a tiny bit left, I usually throw it away. So I don't use the very last bit of additive, because when you've had the bottle for a long time, not only does it collect dust and particles from the tire or wherever, and it gets collected into the bottle even though you have a sponge there. But the other reason is that when it comes to the end, you may not have all the chemicals left that you want on the tire. I mean, it's mixed every time you shake it, but it might not be adequate to keep the necessary chemicals. So for example, for carpet additives, even though you shake the bottle, you may still not have both chemicals that you want left when there's only a tiny bit left of the bottle. So don't use it until the very end, at least not for racing. I've actually had issues with this in the past where I used a bottle which had just a little bit left, and I switched to a brand new bottle that was full, and it gave me way more grip. And this is just a detail, and it seems a bit seems a bit of a exaggeration, but actually it's is true and it makes a difference. So pay attention to that. Don't use the bottle till the very end, at least not for racing.